The broadcast is now starting and the passive listening mode has been activated for all participants. This conference will be recorded and the recording might be shared with others. The participants list is closed and the chat function operates in private mode with only the speakers and the moderators accessing the chat messages. If you prefer not to proceed under these conditions, please log out at your convenience. Good day. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to the second day of our virtual summit, Responsible Artificial Intelligence in Clinical Trials, presented by Cyntegrity. It's a pleasure to have you all here today as we explore this essential and rapidly evolving topic. So I'm Tamara, the operations manager of Cyntegrity's MyRBQM Academy, and I'll be your host for this summit. Before the second day of our conference begins, let me just quickly walk you through the features of our virtual conference platform here. You can send us your questions through the chat sessions using the chat window here, which is located at the bottom right of your screen. Please select Send to Moderators from the drop-down menu bar before submitting your questions so they can reach our team directly. And to ensure a smooth experience, I will share a few troubleshooting tips in just a moment here in the chat with you. These should help resolve any audio issue or video issues that might come up during the sessions. And very important, if you don't see a presentation on your screen, or if the image is frozen, or if it doesn't advance to the next slide, then please refresh your browser window. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your attention. And I'm handing it over to our CEO and founder, Artem Andrianov now, who will start with some opening remarks.
Thank you, Tamara. I hope you can hear me. So good morning, good afternoon, good day to everybody who has joined us today. So dear esteemed colleagues, speakers, and guests, I'm happy to welcome all of you. There are more than 600 registrants we had during the preparation of this event. And that promises to us to be an exciting and pivotal discussion about responsible artificial intelligence in clinical trials. We have today very esteemed guests from leading institutions like Tufts Institute, Halloran Consultants, Nexus Frontiers Health, and Ernst Young. We are positioned to explore the cutting edge of how AI transforms drug development today. Over the past decade, there were a lot of transformation already, but none of them were so impactful as AI. From predicting models, optimizing the recruitment, safety of monitoring, to real-time data insights, revolutionizing how we think about drug development. So this is a new era of AI-powered clinical trials. Why that matters now? As all of you are aware, drug development costs really skyrocketed in the recent time. So, and actually AI helps us to manage this situation. It's already, there are some evidences and there are some publications already, and part of it will be presented today, I hope, that AI promises to cut clinical trial costs by 20% already within the next couple of years. So no longer it's a science fiction, it's a measurable impacts. And we have today, for example, impactful institutions like Tufts Center of Study and Drug Development, who will be presenting elsewhere the insights of their research in AI-driven studies. How these AI-driven studies have demonstrated the power of predictive analytics. Historically, delays and inefficiencies have been weighted down clinical trials. And now AI is not only tackling these problems, but really turning them into new opportunities. So our guests, for example, from Halloran Consultants, Ernst Young, will be showcasing the case studies. So about using AI for clinical trial optimizations, for reducing operational waste and improving patient outcomes. We move forward in this conference and let us dive into the AI enhanced risk management, improved patient recruitment, and even predicting adverse events before they occur. So as we embark all these discussions today, let's remember that this integration of AI in clinical trials in drug development overall is not about innovation. It's about making therapies faster available on the market, improving patient outcomes, and reshaping the future of the healthcare. So thank you and enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much, Artem. Now, I would like to start with our first session here held by Danny Go, Real-World Applications of Trusted AI. Danny Go, founder and CEO of Nexus FrontierTech. Danny brings over 15 years of experience in AI-driven digital transformation, helping global organizations enhance efficiency and decision-making through advanced AI technologies. Welcome, Danny.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again in this summit. I participated in the last year's summit together with Cyntegrity, and I'm honored to be invited to be on this year's conference again. My topic today is to basically illustrate a case study of Moderna of how they deploy and enhance the reliability of using AI and how they actually implement it in their production team in a very short time. Before we begin, just a very quick introduction about myself. As mentioned, I am an academic. I teach. I lecture at the University of Oxford, ESCP, École des Ponts in Paris. And my passion is basically to research and discover the use of AI in today's world, and basically to uncover any hiccups, any problems that might encounter, not only coming from the technology point of view, but also from the humanity point of view. My articles in various platforms like Harvard Business Review, World Economic Forum, Forbes, are all centered around the adoption of AI in human behavior, and also to basically discover the tools and means of how to actually successfully integrate AI into organizations. So before we begin, I thought it would be interesting to learn from you. What do you think in the industry of healthcare that do you think would benefit the most from AI? Whether it's the diagnostic area, whether it's the treatment planning, whether it's patient care and monitoring, or the administrative processes. Let's take it a minute for you to select your answer, and we can basically discuss a little bit about the findings.
Thank you very much, Danny. The poll is on the screen now, and our audience can make a selection. Please select only one answer here. Which area of healthcare do you think would benefit the most from AI? I give it a little more time. Yeah, I can still see the answers coming in. I'm sorry, but I'm breaking up here so that I'm presenting the results on the screen now for us, Danny.
Great. Thank you, Tamara. The result is surprising to me, but also not surprising. The administrative processes comes on top of the diagnostic and also the patient care and monitoring. The treatment planning, as understood, it is the least concern at this stage. In my experience of working with NHS, this answer really depends on where you are coming from. That means where you care the most. Even though you might be working in the same industry, same company, but your responsibility in each department are different. And that's why you care the most about what you are doing. And there's no right and wrong. There's no which one is better than the other. As you can see from the result, it shows a pretty equal representation over the sectors except the treatment planning. And that is basically how I will explain to you from the management point of view, how would the deployment or implementation of a new technology goes into a large organization that could goes beyond thousands of employees. So the case studies that I'm presenting today is a recent case study by Moderna, a partnership between Moderna and OpenAI. This use case is already published publicly on both Moderna and OpenAI website, so you can easily access the case studies to be able to study in more detail. But today, what I'm trying to provide is a little bit more insights from my point of view of the results and the methodology and the challenges that they faced during the implementation phase, combining with my experience. So the challenge of Moderna is the management team had a very high ambition. They were trying to adopt 100% of generative AI into their team within 6 months of period. And that is a very, very, high target. Obviously, just the same with every other organization for the implementation of technology, they face with many different challenges, which I will illustrate to you one by one. But they achieved a great result. That's why it became a case study. They achieved a widespread adoption within 2 months. More than 40% of users uses, the ChatGPT. Particular department like the legal, the branding department, especially had a very high adoption rate. The clinical trial in trying to utilizing AI to reduce their time and the repetitive testing has resulted in a great time savings for them, which improved the team's performance by at least 7 to 8 times. So the granular result described by the CEO of Moderna was, by adopting this technology, he feels the adoption of AI allows him to expand the team by at least 7 to 8 times of productivity with the same amount of employees. And the return of the employees is much more fulfilling as well, because it allows them to actually utilizing technology to help them to remove the mundane, repetitive tasks in their daily job, which allows them to actually enjoy a higher satisfaction in carrying out their tasks. So I would like to explain further the success, where they are able to actually achieve 100% adoption of AI across all departments, although the adoption rate is different. For example, like the legal department is almost 100% adoption, whereas different department has different adoption rate. They were able to basically continue to create a lot more different custom-made GPT that allows them to actually use it for different approach. I'd like to mention that these GPT are not created by OpenAI. They actually allow the users, the team, to create their own AI with a very simple interface, with a very simple instructions, where they allow the users to understand what is their core problems and to actually use that to create a solution that can directly helping them. And the result is basically an enterprise-wide collaboration and productivity. So before the management team of Moderna started to basically adopt these, they faced with the strategic questions. How can they actually adopt this? They faced with the questions of whether should they be adopting a top-down approach, just like every other organizations that, employing consultants to design the solutions and then to adopt it, to train the users to use it, or a bottom-up approach to actually let the users, the team, to create their own with a framework. That comes to the second questions of them. If they are to employ a bottom-up approach, what are the concerns and what are the tools that they should be providing to their team to allow them to actually adopt such a technology? Which means the two main concerns from the team is that a framework that allows them to easily create, that doesn't really need a very high learning curve, and also to address some concerns about whether will AI replace their job, whether will AI accuracy meet their workload, to give them, rather than helping them, will the AI actually ruining their job or make it worse for them? Many employees have such concerns, or whether is the AI accurate enough or not. As shown in this challenge, whether it's the hallucinations, reliability, integration. So the Moderna management team, when they faced with these two challenges, combining with a very daring objective that they have, they took a very drastic approach. They employed the bottom-up approach with a very good framework, and that began with a change management and training to the team before they even begin the first adoption, as well as to give them one or two use cases that is very successful, to let them have a reliability, somebody to rely on, something to rely on. And that is what they approach, what they employed in the implementation. So what they do is that when they allow the team, when they taught the team of the concept of how to actually understand the use of GPT in their own respective department, and giving them some simple instructions to actually create it, they actually address the concerns of, for example, like traceability, not only teaching them the ways to do it, but also giving them the tools like, if you don't believe in the answer, you can always find out the source of the data with just one click. The traceability of the data, and to be able to trust the data that is resulted from the ChatGPT is extremely important for the employee to be able to trust and start using it, not to mention to actually try to create of their own. So at the end of the period, when they employ these tactics, although they still have a lot of learning curve, but the questions were mostly coming from the bottom, from the users to the top management or to the transformation team, which allows them to constantly addressing and helping them, rather than a top-down approach of giving them a very, planning a very big plan, and then take a very long time to deploy or implement in a very long approach. So the basically the multi-model approach, allowing them to combine different diverse data type in different departments, allow them to actually sharing the results and the data across the organizations. That especially enhance the user's confidence by thinking that if I adopt this technology, I don't actually have to go to another department to ask for data or to think of how to actually collaborate with other departments. These two allow them to seamlessly integrate the data from other departments in a much easier way, which would they believe would definitely enhance, as a healthcare professional, I do believe you feel that if with more data, your research, your work will be a lot more reliable as well. And they also actually give them a very important part of the tool of a case study within the organization in the early stage of what they call the Dose ID GPT, which is a GPT that was created to help them to run the trial of the experiment without the need of actually doing too many blind testing. The GPT will give them which data is more reliable, using which methodology can achieve a higher accuracy, or this data point is actually less accurate than less likely to achieve the desired result than the other, which saves them a lot of time. And also it allows them to actually slowly from here, which is the call center part of the organization's activity, which is to discover new drugs, to other departments of, for example, diagnostics, treatment planning, patient care, and multiple areas. The end of the result is more than 700 GPT were created from different departments, from different users within the 6 months period. And some of these GPT were basically unheard of the problems that they addressed were unheard of by the management team. So they were very pleased about the development, of this. So through this approach of bottom up, they were able to basically, run through many different rigorous testing, validating multiple challenges, while also address the concerns of the security and the compliance of the AI, because this is a trial to allow the members to adopt the technology. While they are approaching this, they are also thinking many different compliance and many different things that they need to follow, because they know their jobs better than anybody else, better than the management, better than different departments, colleagues. Everyone is a professional on what they do. And so basically from there, it basically scale up the applications to wider applications, to the legal team, contract reviewing, brand management, how to actually explain, a very complicated drugs to a very normal person out there, especially with very difficult, drugs name, descriptions, the effects of it. It's always one of the biggest challenge from the healthcare industry. Investor relations, they need a lot of investment to actually carry out all these activities. And the most important thing is the cross-functional integration. So I am going to pause my presentation with this one last slide of the key takeaway, is to basically try to think of AI as a reverse engineering tool rather than a top-down approach. By employing a reverse engineering, you will basically look at the objective first, set up the framework, let the team decide. Let the user decide what is the real objective, and reverse engineers of the application steps to actually do that, because that's the powerful of AI to basically automate a lot of these steps. Hence, you're able to actually adopt this in a different way, in a unique way, and it will ensure a much better outcome. For example, like, foster a learning culture, allowing them to prioritize certain things, especially the key important things like reliability, embrace different approaches, and the most important thing is to balance the adoption of technology and human. that technology will never replace human, but it's a collaboration tool to allow human to extend our potential in a much better way. Thank you very much for the time, and that is the end of my presentation.
Indeed, Danny. Yesterday it was mentioned that AI is giving humans superpowers. So that's basically what you are saying as well. We have, before you leave the slot, we have a question from the audience. It's a question that comes up a lot. So while creating such a MChat for Moderna, was there a risk of sharing company information or data to Web or OpenAI, or does it in any way impact training of current model of GPT?
That's a very good question. OpenAI has agreed publicly that when they are working with private organizations like Moderna in a large-scale deployment, they have agreed not to utilize the data, this private data, for retraining. That's number one. Number two is most of these deployments are done on-prem, which means there's very little chance for the data to be exposed out to OpenAI unless there is a presetting of it. On-prem deployment and on-prem analysis has a much lesser chance for the data to be shared with others. So that these are the assurance from OpenAI when they strike the deal with Moderna to carry out such a large-scale deployment.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you also very much from my side, Danny. We are now coming to our next speaker, Kanchana Iyer, about navigating AI legislation. So, Kanchana Iyer, she's a senior consultant, regulatory affairs at Halloran Consulting Group. And Kanchana brings over a decade of experience in regulatory affairs, guiding companies through complex regulatory landscapes and ensuring compliance for medical devices and digital health products. Welcome, Kanchana.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Linda and Artem and the rest of the Cyntegrity team for inviting Halloran to share some thoughts this year. This is my first time attending the summit, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really appreciating the insights that others have shared thus far. So I want to share a little bit about considerations from my perspective, which is primarily being in the regulatory affairs space, about digital health technologies and the integration of AI and ML into these into the healthcare and medtech space. Move forward. So we've seen this emergence of digital technologies everywhere around us. I mean, from apps on our phones to wearable devices, and these have permeated into the healthcare industry, making things like personalized medicine, telehealth, health IT more robust than they've ever been. Digital health technologies is a pretty broad term. They all play a role in healthcare, whether that's helping a patient manage his or her symptoms or treating or diagnosing a disease. They're part of a complex ecosystem made up of computers, connected devices, and software. And then when you add this additional layer of complexity by integrating machine learning algorithms, you're certainly on your way to driving more efficiency, improving accuracy, improving accessibility, but you also introduce some additional variables. With digital health technologies, there's already a lot of gray when you're thinking about navigating some of these different frameworks, regulatory being one of them. Here in the US, with FDA, there has been this evolution of legislation and regulatory guidance on how best to regulate these digital health technologies. And even though we now have a lot of resources at our disposal, it can still be very daunting to find that appropriate level of balance. So I've personally had lots of discussions on how best, to architect software, for example, that contains medical and non-medical device functionality. And then if you try then to integrate an AI tool of some sort, you're potentially, still grappling with these same questions along with some new ones. And then there's the evolution of the algorithm itself. What is it doing? What are the outputs? Are there safety and effectiveness concerns? If so, what are they? How accurate are the outputs of the algorithm? So many things to think about. And it's not always clear on either side of the table, which is, what makes it interesting. But it also makes it that much more critical to have cross-functional interactions. The number and the vastness of the applications are countless and provide a means to streamline healthcare where we have currently, overly burdensome systems, physician burnout, and we have a population that's living longer. And we need now more than ever tools at our disposal that will help us to predict, the prognoses of diseases and ensure that we're prescribing the most appropriate medications. Certainly not a straightforward mission. Apologies, I'm having a little bit of difficulty. Okay, there we go. I think I've moved it forward. But we've made a lot of progress already. If you think about the evolution of digital health technologies and software as a medical device over the last decade, FDA and international health authorities have been hyper-focused on providing us with adequate guidance and recommendations. And I think they've really helped. I think they've set us up for success in the AI and machine learning space within healthcare and medtech. I list a few things here on this slide that I think have set the groundwork for integrating AI into digital technologies. So one example, FDA evaluates devices by applying its benefit risk framework. This means that the device conforms to some basic principles, and those obviously differ based on the type of device. For an AI ML enabled diagnostic, for example, it may be the demonstration of sensitivity or specificity, analytical or clinical validation, and ensuring repeatable and reliable performance. Clinical decision support is another big one that's received some pushback from the external stakeholders, especially after the latest guidance was released. Essentially, it's a risk-based framework based on how the HCP is informed by the CDS software. So similarly, AI/ML can be used in clinical decision support, potentially making the output even more accurate. And so that brings into questions of the reliance of the HCP on the CDS tool. So to date, FDA has approved over 900 AI/ML enabled devices. Most of these approvals fall within the radiology devices category. That's most likely due to there being lots of data available, especially within the medical imaging space. Imaging plays a critical role in assisting clinicians with helping patients diagnose and manage their conditions. Similarly, the area of digital pathology too depends on image analysis. I wanted to share this as an example. It's an area that I personally would love to be more involved in, and it's certainly becoming more expansive with more approvals. It brings together different principles of science that I think from a regulatory strategy perspective makes it quite interesting. So it essentially is the development of digital scans of pathology tissues from slides and how they're able to be visualized and assessed and what conclusions can be drawn from them. The digital scans are then typically obtained from scanners that are called whole slide scanners. The regulatory challenges include drawing correlations between the scans and what clinical performance and diagnostic decisions can be made. So that's where the clinical decision support piece comes in, and you're creating a much more complex use case when you throw in AI and machine learning algorithms. And there aren't any standardized approaches as yet in place, which adds further complexity to how these devices are reviewed. So early in the 2000s, we saw more of these whole slide scanners come to the market, introducing the need to validate the digital pathology workflow. We actually tend to see, interestingly enough, the use of some of these imaging modalities and diagnostic tools used in the veterinary medicine space first. So, they really kind of help pave that pathway for similar tools to be used with human patients. So we've seen some recent clearances, 510(k) clearances in the field of digital pathology that have been used to support clinical decision making. One of the earlier clearances for prostate cancer decision support was from Page AI. The system uses AI-based imaging to increase the pathologist's efficiency to identify areas of malignancy. A more recent clearance was from Proscia for their software platform that aids pathologists with their review of whole slide images. They demonstrated that it was as accurate as manual glass slide reads. So if you think about classic image analysis software tools, they can be very tedious and very manual. With the increased push in leveraging deep learning and neural networks, that burden involved with image analysis can be significantly reduced, such that the models can be trained to help identify structures that are not only potential malignancies, but even structures that are more ambiguous. And so that, kind of flags where there's a need for increased training. So these systems can be more integrated into the laboratory workflow, thanks to things like interoperability, which is another important initiative that FDA has been providing guidance with. With the digital environment as connected as it is, the use of cloud-based systems obviously has increased, and this, of course, presents further logistical challenges, but also brings up regulatory challenges and considerations like cybersecurity.
Kanchana, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, from the audience. How do regulators take into account biases that may be in the data sets used to train AI, thus potentially having an effect on management?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is a huge point of discussion with the regulators, which kind of encompassed in this field of clinical decision support even. And so, just like other diagnostic tools, kind of bridging the gaps from analytical validation to clinical validation is just as important, if not more important, when there is a AI-enabled diagnostic, for example. So that is a huge consideration for the regulators.
Thank you, Kanchana.
Yeah, absolutely. So in such a case as with digital pathology or AI-enabled technologies, there are certain systems in place that need to be traversed, and a few of which I list here on this slide here. We're all quite familiar with the work that the regulators are doing both here in the US and abroad. They're certainly, I think, working hard to provide clarity and guidance where they can and where it's truly needed. FDA has been sort of reimagining the whole regulatory pathway for software devices for some time now. They recognize that software is quickly iterative and have been working with industry to streamline regulatory process where they can. So with their predetermined change control plans, or PCCP, they want developers of AI and ML enabled devices to plan ahead for anticipated modifications and think about the impacts those changes would have to the overall safety and effectiveness. And I think this tracks well with kind of the risk-based approach that FDA has been taking with software as a medical device, or software in a medical device devices. Similarly, the EU and UK have also been keeping safety and efficacy at top of mind, without obviously wanting to hinder progress and innovation. So much so, I think that the regulators, they obviously have come together to have these discussions. And one example of that is the good machine learning practices guiding principles that was developed as a result of these collaborations. Another tidbit I think is interesting. During the pandemic, FDA issued an enforcement discretion policy for remote digital pathology devices. So this allowed for digital pathology hardware and software to be used even though they weren't approved as devices, provided that internally they were doing validation at the institution or the laboratory that was using the device. And the Center for Medicare and Medicaid too allowed for non-CLIA certified labs to review slides remotely. So this brings up a sort of a related topic with the final rule that was published by FDA on laboratory developed tests. Obviously not a topic that we're discussing here today, but definitely related in the sense that it's entirely feasible that an LDT or an IVD could be enabled by AI and machine learning. From a legislative perspective, I think the EU has done a tremendous job towards harmonizing, towards a more harmonized system across industries that are leveraging AI-enabled systems and helping them bring them to market. I think there are definitely some opportunities there for further clarity, especially since there is that recognition kind of across the board that the risks involved within health tech and med tech can be very different. So, we're hearing this term responsible AI. It's part of the summit this year. And I can totally get it. And it's totally relatable in the sense that there are some very malicious ways that people are using AI platforms like ChatGPT. And so outside of my day job, I work with kids in my community who are in the foster care system or are homeless, essentially. And it is becoming easier for adults to use ChatGPT to lure children into trusting them. And then they are able to manipulate these children into sharing explicit videos and photos, and then extort them for money or even other things. So clearly, we all have a responsibility to educate ourselves, but we also need to educate our legislators, because there's no way they will be able to create laws and a framework that makes sense if they don't have the information that they need. Which brings me to my final slide here, on ways we can better work together to drive AI and machine learning enabled devices and applications forward. Clearly, there's a lot happening, but honestly, my personal opinion is I think we can do a lot better. There is, so much misinformation and disinformation out there. To me, it's very reminiscent of what we saw during the pandemic. As us people involved in this work, I think we have a responsibility to educate one another. We have a responsibility to educate the public, and we need to do a better job of collaborating even within our own industry. I think it can be very siloed. Probably now more than ever because of the economic climate that we're dealing with. But at the end of the day, we all have a common goal in mind, and we need to keep that at the forefront more often. So it's not about these thought leadership opportunities. It's not about self-promotion and what we can, what individually we can do, but what we can do collaboratively, and that is to enable healthcare and bring to the patients and the end users, irrespective of their demographic, the tools and the technologies they need to feel safer and healthier. And I'll leave you with a couple of memes here and take any questions you might have.
Great insights, Kanchana. We have some questions. We like to ask them at the end of this session, at the Q&A. You will be in the panel. You will be staying with us anyways. So love to see you back a bit later. Sure. Now we are going to switch to our colleagues of Ernst & Young. They will further dig into the regulatory landscape. And Tamara, I think you are almost ready to introduce our new speakers.
Indeed, I am. Thank you very much. So I would like to welcome now Simon Krastetter from Ernst & Young Risk Consulting, Senior Manager. So Simon brings years of experience in risk consulting, helping companies navigate compliance and business development challenges within the pharmaceutical industry. Yorrick van Ohlen, Manager Ernst & Young Risk Consulting. Yorrick combines his scientific expertise and experience in risk consulting to help companies in the life sciences and healthcare sectors manage risks effectively and maintain compliance. Welcome, Simon, and welcome, Yorrick. Just a second, I'm uploading your presentation here. And therewith, the stage is yours, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tamara, for the warm welcome. And also hello to everybody here participating in this great event. We were already introduced, and we are happy to share our insights with you on navigating AI legislation. Giving you some industry insights, but also some insights from our internal sources on this topic, and some guidance on that. I would skip that, but what is the agenda? What is in place for today? So first, we will guide you a bit through current trends of AI in life science and medicine. So really dig deep. What is the focus within clinical trials and what emerging trends are there? Then we intend to give you a glimpse on what use cases exist within the clinical trial field. So what regulatory challenges we are currently facing, but also what opportunities are lying ahead. And in the second part, we will discuss the myriad of legal and regulatory AI topics, comparing, for example, US, European, and Chinese legislation and requirements, plus also provide you with a deep dive on the current EMEA's reflection paper on the use of AI in medical product lifecycle. And at the end, we will close with a short heads up what you can do, whether you are an industry expert or whether you are part of the research field. So this is our lean agenda. So I suggest let's start. So we have quite often these discussions concerning AI. What is AI? And as this is a quite evolving topic over the last years, there are also various definitions and approaches out in the market. And at the beginning, we would like to give you a short understanding what we understand at EY of AI, and also to enable you to follow us within the next minutes through our agenda. And so you are able to really smoothly follow us. So AI is for us a kind of application of computational tools in order to perform tasks that were or are traditionally performed by human intelligence. And therefore, there are different subcategories which we are all aware of, like machine learning, deep learning, or generative AI. And under that umbrella, we have AI. So use cases with Gen AI is the most common topic within the clinical trials field and the most urgent we are discussing with our clients, especially within the R&D sector or the lead optimization, or as today with today's focus, clinical trials. So keep this in mind, and then let's jump to the next slide, meaning it's all about data for AI. This is why life science and medical sector is kind of predestined via transformation through AI, meaning that we have an immeasurable wealth of data across different areas that can be applied in order to be used for AI tools, varying or derived from the complexity of the biological systems. For example, in the field of genomics, we have a vast amount of data, biological data processed by specialized bioinformaticians, meaning that we have different sources of data that can be applied within this field and also used, keeping always in mind that there are risks with this data, like data topics, data security topics, cybersecurity concerns, and so on, but as well opportunities. So in order to make this data handleable, we have different tools or ways AI can be applied, whether it's machine learning, deep learning, or generative AI. But to put it in a nutshell, at the end of the day, AI makes the data much more accessible and also interpretable. So this is about the data fact. And as it's all about data, we will build a bridge what we see as current trends within the clinical trial design and implementation space. So of course, there is a strong emphasis on increasing the R&D productivity, for example, or also regarding trial optimization. We talk about current trends with regard to hybrid and decentralized trials. And also we talk about, for example, in the US, the entry of retail pharmacy. Nevertheless, the core topic, and which we want to jump in today with you in more detail, is all about the digital transformation within the clinical trials. Meaning that we, in our client conversations, we see that there's increased technology adoption as AI and automated-based tools are transforming clinical trials by increasing its speed, its efficiency, and its probability of success. And therefore, we see a myriad of usages within this field, like virtual trials, digital twins handling, or also to put it in a broader perspective, AI clinical trial management systems. And within the next minutes, we will jump into this topic of digital transformation in clinical trials in more detail, meaning that we discuss how AI solutions and its core capabilities can streamline the pharma value chain. And this is something we derived within the last years from our discussions with our clients, that there's also a huge variety of use cases. Nevertheless, you can narrow down these use cases to the core capabilities of AI, meaning that we have process automation, content generation, and problem solving. So what you see on the left-hand side. And derived on this, focusing on clinical trials, we can say for sure that the major cases when we conduct projects within the life science or medtech field are referring to trial design, trial management, patient enrollment, as well as clinical data. So in order to feed this whole issue a bit with numbers, so I mean, I can tell you a lot, but nevertheless, there are numbers out there where we can see that there is this increasing importance in the evolving market segment to clinical trials. We see already today that there are nearly 500 drug candidates each year developed with the help of AI, whereas 10 years ago, for example, there were only 60. So I like this number, and also to see how it evolved within the last years and how important this topic of AI within clinical trials and especially within the development of new drug candidates has developed. So now turning the picture a bit more to potential use cases to make this a bit more tangible and also to build the bridge later on to the regulatory developments, we see that there is a relatively huge amount of use cases. Nevertheless, we can also narrow down this high value use cases across the entire clinical trial feed within automation across the clinical trial value chain, optimizing patient recruitment in clinical trials, and also early prediction of disease progression. And the key within this topic is to understand that there are, of course, possibilities, and it's also right to make the right choices in terms of the use cases impact, its feasibility, and its risk. And in order to kind of develop this with regard to a business imperative, so that AI is becoming a business imperative. So I don't want to go on each example we have developed or brought here for you, but what a standout example is where we were in close contact with one of our clients was within the field of automation across the CT value chain, meaning that we worked on a natural language progression model or systems, a system that helped to analyze data and also to deliver automated production of key submission documents. And at the end, this, for example, helped to reduce the report writing times up to 40%. So this is a quite tangible example, what you can see where AI is used and also provides this huge potential what we see on the market. And keeping this in mind, there are also quite a lot of other statistics. Nevertheless, it's, I would say, natural fact that the companies are pushing, applying generative AI or the machine learning, deep learning, and so on. And the challenge at the moment is that the regulatory bodies around the globe keep pace. There are, within the last 2 to 3 years, there were huge investments within this field, and we have seen popping up different regulations, standards, thought leadership papers, and so on that topic. And the challenge at the moment is to keep pace with this technological development. So what we see there is that they have this huge amount of clinical trials, AI solutions, and this huge acceptance with regard to Gen AI, especially within healthcare and life science companies, as you can see on the right-hand side. Nevertheless, it's the challenge that the effort of the regulatory bodies keeps the pace with this development, and also concerning responsible AI, that it is becoming a priority to consider for the life science companies. As we are all aware that unethical AI practices could lead to societal harms in various forms, could lead then reputational risks for organization, which finally could lead into commercial losses and brand value degradation. So for us, it's important, and also to follow our presentation today, that you keep in mind that responsible AI isn't just about the risks is also about realizing value. So meaning for us that there's a close relationship between highly trusted and highly performing systems. And this is also what we believe is when we talk about potential risks. We already heard quite a lot of interesting talks today and yesterday on this topic and on the variety of different risks when you use artificial intelligence tools within the clinical trial fields or in general within life science and medtech. And we want to highlight just a few on that topic, that we see that most life science clients of us or medtech clients kind of struggle with successfully implementing very important at scale potential AI capabilities. And that you have there this topic of change management as a potential organizational pain point, then that you have the data pain points, meaning how to handle data in a secure and safeguarding manner, for example, patient privacy data and so on, and that you keep pace with the regulatory developments that we currently see across the globe. And by keeping this in mind, that you kind of put all these challenges together, we believe that a robust regulation within AI will enable life science and medical companies to minimize existing challenges and also to harness the opportunities of AI. And by saying this, I will hand over to my colleague Yorrick, which will give you now an insight in this current development on the regulatory landscape.
Oh, sorry, I think I just pressed the wrong button. Exactly. Thank you very much, Simon. As Simon mentioned, a robust regulation is required for harnessing the opportunities, and it seems like the world agrees. If we take a look at the global development in the recent years, we see that on an international level, like, for example, the OECD, or on a national level in the single countries, there's a heavy development in regulatory and legislation publications. We can boil them usually down to 6 key regulatory trends we see on the right-hand side. One of them being aforementioned OECD has certain principles regarding AI, and they seem to serve as a global benchmark for all AI guidance policymakers, and they seem to agree to take a risk-based approach. Furthermore, they consider not only sector-specific considerations, but also dive into how AI impacts other policies, for example, data, cybersecurity. And we see that sandboxes are becoming a norm to be used to have a safe environment for the testing and development or validation of AI tools. All this is set in an international setting, so we see a growing collaboration between the different countries or the different institutions as well. Nevertheless, despite all those, or in terms of all those similarities, there's also some differences we can detect between all those different publications, mainly in the level of detail or complexity of the legislation, regulation, and the guidelines. On the one hand, so I brought 3 examples now just to clarify a little bit more. On the one hand, we have a really high level of detail in the EU, where they have the EU AI Act for legislation, as well as guidance in the EMA reflection papers and similar documents. On the other hand, we have the United States, where the White House has issued an executive order, and as well there's a congressional legislation on that could impose restrictions on high-risk AI tools. But overall, in comparison to the EU, we see that it's not as detailed as in the EU. The third player here would be, for example, China. China itself is more on the legislation regulation scale than on the guideline scale, where they implemented through their committees ethical norms for AI, as well as the management of AI services. One big difference we can see with China is that they actually have delineated way more direct responsibilities for the providers of the AI in monitoring the behavior and the content that is generated. I want to stress the point that if I talk about the complexity or the level of detail, this is not necessarily a rating system, as we know that while a high level of detail and regulation can lead to things like improving trust and patient safety, on the other side, we also have to take into account the challenges arise, like slower innovation or non-compliance risks. Nevertheless, with AI tools becoming more and more specifics and more AI tools on the market, we believe that the high level of detail is actually quite a necessity, leading to our statement that increasing demand in AI will increase regulatory necessity. We believe that the world will look to the EU to make the step from AI to responsible AI. And if you want to understand the legislation setting of AI in the EU, we have to take a look at the AI legislative and regulatory landscape on the EU. And what we can actually see that it is quite an interconnected one with a horizontal legislation and the vertical regulation aspects. Horizontal legislation being overarching legislations, on the one hand, particular for or designed for AI, like the AI Act or AI Liability Directive that is still in draft right now. But on the other hand, we also have other horizontal legislation that have to be taken into account, like, for example, the Data Act or the General Data Protection Regulation. On top of that, we have sector-specific vertical regulations, namely, for example, the medical device regulation or in vitro device regulation that need to be taken into account, as well, in particular for clinical trials, the clinical trial regulation. On top of that, we also have some guidance in our sectors. For example, the aforementioned reflection paper on AI from the EMA, as well as good clinical practice and good manufacturing practice. On the side note, we have to take into account that, for example, GCP and GMP are also requirements for the approval process of clinical trials, making them to adhere to. If we then want to take a look at the hard piece of this legislation piece, the AI Act, you can say basically that the AI Act now came into force in August 2024. And it came into force with a step-by-step rollout for its obligations, where prohibition on unacceptable risk AI will apply after 6 months. Then the majority of obligations will apply after 2 years, excluding certain high-risk AI systems in the medical or in general that are under Annex 1. And as a side note, a lot of medical devices will fall under this 3-year obligation period. Generally speaking, the objective of the AI Act is to create a safe environment where fundamental rights are respected, to ensure that we have a legal certainty in our system, and that it is and that there's a governance structure around it, so that EU law can be adhered to. Furthermore, as also as a goal is to facilitate a single market. But how do we get there? As we before or in the previous talk heard, the AI Act worked with a risk-based approach, and it categorizes AI systems into unacceptable risk, high risk, limited risk, and low risks. And I mentioned before, many of our healthcare applications actually fall under the high risk category, just for the fact that they directly deal with humans or people. Furthermore, the AI Act mandates that we establish AI regulatory sandboxes in which developers can develop or test or validate in a safe environment or in a regulatory supervised safe environment their applications. It puts the human always in the center. So every AI application should always be used or developed with people in mind. It requires, in particular for high-risk AI system, that there's a human oversight. So there always has to be given an interface between the human and the AI tool, and everything is under strict rules on data protection, governance, and transparency. On a side note, we have to obviously also address penalties and enforcement. So there are penalties, in particular, up to 70% of the global annual turnover, or 35 million euros, for prohibited AI system violations. And then we have stage down other prohibitions. And this all will be enforced on the EU level by the Central AI Office and the AI Board, as well as complemented by market surveillance authorities on a national level, so in the single countries. So we talked about the risk-based approach and the categorization of AI systems. I mentioned before that we have 4 different AI systems, and we want to take here a look at some certain examples and also what it means or what requirements are in the EU AI Act. So under unacceptable risk, we have, for example, AI system that do some social scoring, have facial recognition or emotion inference. Those are, generally speaking, prohibited. We have to also name here that it's under lawful medical context, they can be allowed. One of those examples would be, or from the top of my head would be, that if we look into the medical field of depression, where AI tools could recognize patterns in the facial expression and therefore maybe conduct if a person potentially has depression. In the high risk, which is most likely the biggest category for us, in particular in the medical device and clinical trials area, we have medical devices of class 2A and above. So that is more. Oh, sorry, I think I just lost connection.
You're back, Yorrick. All is good now. Thank you.
So I hope so. I will jump back to the high risk. I don't know how much you missed. So for high risk systems, medical devices of class 2A, as well as AI systems that fall as or are safety components for medical devices fall under there. But on the other side, also we have healthcare workforce management. So it's not only about patients. We also have to take the whole system around, obviously, clinical trial into mind. And for those high-risk AI systems, there are extensive requirements we will look into further in a second. The next would be limited risks. So here we have health assistant chatbots, certain general purpose AI models, for example, language models and patient information. And usually they are under transparency obligation with some certain special obligations for general purpose AI models that have this systemic risk, so high impact capabilities, and they're also defined in Annex 13. Last but not least, there are low risks. So we would count, for example, spam filters or system used for sorting medical literature to those, and they have to adhere to the codes of conduct. As I mentioned before, high risk AI systems are the core of the whole thing, and they are under certain regulations. Under those regulations, we can find, for example, the risk management of those high-risk AI systems, meaning that risks need to be identified, managed, and mitigated in a respectful manner. We have data governance, we have technical documentation and record keeping. So we have what would fall under there would be instructions or also information about the limits of the AI tool, transparency, the before-mentioned human oversight. Cybersecurity is obviously always a topic, in particular with data protection regulations, accuracy and robustness. We have quality management and as well third-party conformity assessment by notified bodies. And last but not least, post-market surveillance. On the other hand, we also have certain guidelines that will support us going through the landscape of regulation and legislation. One of them being the recently published or recently updated EMA reference paper to AI. Generally speaking, the reference paper or the guidelines adhere to similar ethical norms as the EU AI Act. So we again have the human agency and oversight. We have safety in terms of technical, but also privacy safety. We have transparency and accountability, as well as safety, social, environmental, and diversity factors. On the general side, it touches the whole life cycle of medicinal products. So from early development to post-authorization phases. It also takes into account a risk-based approach and regulatory interactions, where there's a regular impact and risk analysis for AI system has to be done. The only addition we can find here is that it also talks about, on the one side, high patient risk and high regulatory impact. That signifies that the AI systems used could lead to significant changes or actions by regulatory bodies. In particular for those systems, if there are changes in those systems, a re-evaluation of, for example, the risk analysis needs to be done. There are also technical aspects that need to be taken into account, like care for data management and robust model development practices, as well as transparency and explainability, for example, through line analysis, both for the model itself and also individual inferences. Last but not least, there's also the governance, integrity, and data protection aspect. So standard operating procedures should always incorporate GXP principles for all aspects of your AI tools. And additionally, also it is important that personal data is handled responsible and data anonymity is preserved. If you then take a look on the right-hand side, we see that there are also some implication, also some helpful tools for clinical trials themselves. And they kind of go strongly in the direction of the interface with other regulations, as before mentioned. So on the one hand, we have the interaction with GCP. So AI models always should meet GCP requirements and have the impact and assessed in a benefit and risk assessment. And it's also to mention that for the high patient risk and high regulatory impact AI tools, there are more or extensive documentation requirements, for example, for the architecture development and data processing. In terms of medical devices regulation and in vitro diagnostic regulation, we see that AI applications that have an interplay with those devices, or maybe in the clinical management of an individual patient, fall under those definitions of those medical devices. They need to respect the respective regulation as well. For statistics, whenever we use AI models in transformation analysis or interpretation of data in a clinical trial, we also need to adhere to the statistical principles for clinical trials and also include analysis of the impact on downstream statistical inference. Last but not least, the paper also mentioned differences between early and late phases of clinical trials, with the note that usually for data analysis in early stage clinical trials, this is usually a low risk environment, although it is to mention that obviously the more robust our statistical data or estimates are, the more advantages will be for subsequent clinical trials. One exception in this regard would be that there are applications for the treatment assignings or dosing, where they obviously become more high risk. In late stage clinical trials, the risks that need to be mitigated mainly are related to overfitting and data leakage. But this is not everything that the EMA is planning. So they have a whole guideline in that regard that can be sorted into basically 4 pillars. First one being policy and guidance support, with the EMA reflection paper on AI as a starting point. They plan to develop further guidance for AI use in medical product lifecycle, in particular with a domain-specific focus, for example, in AI and pharmacovigilance. There's also the support for tools and technologies. So what we see is that large language models, for example, chatbots as personal assistants become more and more trendy, and they want to implement phase support and monitoring of those, as well as offer a tools policy for collaborative AI development. Then there's collaboration and change management, where the EMA network wants to work with different agency or institutions for the knowledge sharing, and also offers AI public workshops on a yearly basis, as well as master classes on AI every second year. Last but not least, there's experimentation. So everything, as mentioned before, should be done in sandboxes, and what they're doing is that they have like a 6-monthly experimentation phase or cycles, where new tools and techniques, for example, digital twins, will be tested. And as well, they will bring some guiding principles and research priorities in there. With this,
Yorrick.
yeah.
Yeah, you come to a closure, I think. That's
yes,
what I
yes.
want to ask.
So we have basically last slide, next step, where Simon will give you a really, really brief overview. I think 1 minute he has. And then we'll finish.
Let's keep it short and simple and close the loop here. So what we believe is important, that you kind of keep pace with the developments regulatory wise, to also receive the insights. For example, Yorrick just provided you with regard to clinical trials, then also apply this within your organization. So figuring out what impact the specific regulations have on the high risk or high AI use cases you already implemented. And at the end, we always recommend to educate and train within your organization the people in order to understand what potential AI has, but also what kind of risks and opportunities lies within. So to close this, thank you for your attention. We hope we have the chance to give you a brief insight into the topic. And if you have additional questions or remarks, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for unraveling this very complex, intertwined international landscape of regulatory and legislation. It was very comprehensive, and I'm sure many questions. First, we need to digest this all, and then lots of questions will certainly pop up. I've saved some questions for the panel and Q&A later. If you can make it, please stay on. And I see already Mary-Jo Lamberti appearing in our screen. She is going to give us a scoop, and she will reveal some new data on the uptake of AI in our industry. And Tamara will introduce Professor Lamberti first.
Thank you very much, Linda. So welcome, Mary-Jo Lamberti, Research Assistant Professor Director at the Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development, Tufts University. Mary-Jo brings over 15 years of expertise in clinical trial benchmarking and patient recruitment, focusing on using technology to improve trial efficiency and outcomes. So welcome, Mary-Jo, again. And here is your stage, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. Today, I'll be talking about the use of AI in clinical research based on a study that we conducted at Tufts this year, and we're still actually refining our results at this moment. So I'll be sharing mainly the high-level overview and results of what we found to date. We hope to put out a publication by either the end of this year or early next year. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Tufts Center, you heard from the moderators that we're part of Tufts University Medical School in Boston, and we do research on all aspects of clinical research and drug development. And I've focused on patient recruitment and retention, outsourcing practices and strategies, and benchmarking in those areas, as well as technology and innovation. And this AI study is a second one that we've done. We published our first benchmarking AI study in 2019. So this is really the second study that we're conducting now. So how did we go about conducting our study? We collaborated with the DIA, which is the Drug Information Association, and with 16 companies, pharmaceutical companies and CROs, and we wanted to focus on examining and mapping the current use of AI and machine learning, and focus really on clinical operations and development, knowing that areas like drug discovery are already very mature in their use and implementation of AI. So we benchmarked 36 activities across the clinical arena, looking at design and planning, execution, and regulatory submissions. The second bullet there has some of what we looked at as well. And for our methodology, we did conduct a global survey, and this was very recent, as I said, and some use case interviews. We're still looking at the results of our interviews with about 12 companies across 19 individuals. So we looked into literature to design our survey, and also talked with thought leaders, and we came up with the FDA discussion paper, which we thought provided a comprehensive definition of AI. And you can refer to that paper, and just basically that we referenced AI and ML together throughout the survey, and that ML is considered a subset of AI. And then when we looked into definitions of generative AI, we looked at the OECD policy paper that was put out on AI in 2023. And generative AI is a subset of machine learning, and the definitions are there as well. So this was provided to the respondents in the survey so they could really establish consensus for what we were asking about. So just to start with an executive summary, and then I'll get into some of the more details of the survey. We had 302 responses, and this was going across pharmaceutical companies, CROs, as well as biotechnology companies and some vendors. And what we did find is that overall adoption levels are in the beginning or piloting stages of implementation. Some are partially implemented, and very few are fully implemented. And I'll show you those details in a moment. We also found that the top reported activities that respondents are using AI and ML for are literature reviews, content development for educational materials, protocol design focused on writing, patient narratives, data analysis for imaging data, and regulatory submissions. We did find that there was quite a bit of dollars, US dollars invested in AI. So this was over $1 million, and this was a mean by activity assessed. And for the teams, in terms of respondents, the time reductions were about 18% across 26 of the 36 activities that we looked at. And that was based on asking individuals what they thought would be the reduction in time for a particular task that they were performing using AI and ML. And we're still looking at this more closely in terms of our analysis, so I'm only really able to present just the overall mean results. We did find that there was a positive outlook for the use of AI ML in drug development. And we have a lot of attitudinal questions as well as quantitative items in our survey. I'll try to do my best to give you an overview of everything. So the respondent characteristics, as I said, we focused on clinical operations and development. So these, the majority of respondents were in this area, as well as data science, data management, and data quality, some legal, procurement, and other types of functions. And we had 302 surveys that we gathered across a variety of companies. This was a global survey, so about half from North America. Respondents were based in Europe, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. We did ask about the number of annual trials that the companies for which the respondents came from conducted, and the mean was 227 per year, and the median 45. So again, a range of different size companies as well. And then therapeutic areas of experience, oncology was the top area for which respondents represented, and urology, cardiovascular, immunology, and neurology, knowing that many represented more than one area. And for dedicated AI functions, almost 70% had a dedicated AI function. So this is just breaking down the overall adoption of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I said before that the largest percentage of respondents were in the beginning or piloting implementation. And we also found that 22% noted that they were in the partially implemented stage of adoption, 21% were planning, and only 10.7% were fully implemented. We did find some statistically significant differences here. So that as annual trial volume increases, so does the likelihood of being in more advanced stages of AI/ML. Again, larger companies having more resources to implement this technology. So what were the top areas? I did go over these, so I won't review those again, but I'd like to bring your attention to the fact that in terms of their primary phase of adoption, many are in the beginning phases or piloting phases of adoption, even for the next 6, except for identification of diverse populations, we see partially implemented. And then consent form development, we see that respondents are planning but not using. Okay, so this is a perception question on the overall impact of AI/ML on effectiveness. And if you look at this, it's a simple pie chart. And what we're seeing is that very positive is in the red or the pink, and the positive is in the green. So that's what about 64% believe that AI/ML has had a positive or very positive impact on the effectiveness of tasks, but yet nearly 34% feel it's too early to tell. So again, that really reflects what I just said about many respondents still reporting they're in the beginning stages of implementation. So these are the top challenges that we found to AI implementation, and these are the top 6. So the first area is data quality challenges. So not only is there a need for massive amounts of data, but sufficient quality data to train systems, and that seems to be the #1 challenge. Second is trust in AI/ML generated output, and we see throughout our survey this issue of trust, and we try to address that in different ways, and I'll try to convey what we found in the time I have. And then intellectual property and other legal concerns related to data sharing. Again, no surprises there. The next area is issues related to the governance of ethical and privacy concerns. So that could be, for example, conflicting federal, national, and global policies. You saw in the previous presentation, there are so many different approaches in terms of regulatory and ethical and privacy concerns regionally as well as by country. The next area is lack of validation of AI/ML-based systems. And then last is organizational design challenges. And that really addresses, for example, the silos that occur in pharmaceutical companies, as well as lack of visibility, for example, of AI/ML projects, or lack of senior management support for this. So again, there are a number of organizational challenges that come here in terms of what we're seeing in implementation. And then what are some top reported methods to increase trust in AI/ML? And #1 was more experience with successful implementations or use cases. And then if you look at the last area there, increased number of peer-reviewed publications detailing AI/ML use cases. So there's really a need for sharing, for publishing, as well as some companies are starting, for example, consortia. So we see, for example, the Impala Consortium, which was established to look at best practices and sharing of knowledge in the pharmacovigilance and Q&A activity area. So that's just one example of the way companies are sharing their successful use cases or implementations. Second is a clearly articulated return on investment. So everyone's looking for ROI. So really bridging the gap between use of technology and business process and getting to ROI. So that's very important. Ethics, transparency, and explainability was the next area. And then more training for internal teams. And I'll share in a moment the skills that folks think are required, as well as the skills that are lacking in organizations. And then a change management plan to follow. And we've seen that in a number of Tufts studies looking at technology or innovation to really have the change management plan introduced early on, to have senior management support and a champion in terms of the technology to really see the implementation all the way through, to have regulatory clarity as well, and in some cases incentive alignment to provide incentives for people that are working on these technologies, because some of them are so new. Okay, so these are looking at some of the skills required that I just mentioned. So the first area is process and integration of AI. So that's really looking for individuals with a knowledge of AI systems that can be integrated into business process. So when we conducted our interviews, we found that there were a lot of areas that were lacking when companies were trying to hire, because they may have the person may have the technology, but they may not be able to integrate it into the pharmaceutical business or the CRO business. So again, trying to marry these two skills together, critical thinking skills, agility, and iterative thinking. So this whole this bar chart here is really a mix of skills and competencies. So also looking for people with data science and data AI ethics and communication skills. So really various areas. Then when we asked about the skills that were lacking, we saw really a reflection of what was required. So process and integration of AI, you just saw, as well as agility and iterative thinking, thought leadership, and then some of the similar areas that I just mentioned in terms of competencies, whether it be data engineering or data science and so forth. I'm just going to show a few more slides, focus on governance and ethics, and then get back to some perception questions about trust and confidence in data accuracy. So AI and governance, we looked into whether or not companies had an AI governance function, and you could see that nearly half did, and then about 13% were planning to. And we did find differences by those conducting more than 100 trials are more likely to report having a central data and AI governance function, and those conducting fewer than 25 are significantly more likely to report that they're planning to create one. So again, differences in sizes of companies. And then we asked about practices. So almost 70% do have data security SOPs. Over half had policies regulating the use of AI within their organization. And then about a third, or a little more than a third, had principles for ethical and transparent data and AI usage, and standards and reporting guidelines for using AI systems. So I'd like to just show two more slides on perceptions, and then I can close out. So this question asked about confidence in data accuracy and cleanliness, and it was, how confident are your organization and functional area that the underlying data used to train AI ML is accurate or clean? And you can see that less than 25% reported that their organization and functional areas are very confident in this, in the data. And the larger grouping there is about 70%. We are doing a little bit more analysis to try to see if it's, for example, the data scientists maybe that have expressed very, and the rest of the folks are somewhat or slightly. So it may vary by functional area. The next is looking at trust in AI/ML recommendations over humans. So the question is, how likely are your organization and function to trust the recommendation or outcomes of the AI/ML solution over humans? You could see it's very small numbers as well. Only 11 and 12% believe their organization and function respectively are very likely to trust recommendations or outcomes of the AI/ML solution over humans. So what we see here is mixed results. We see some positive in terms of positive outlook and effectiveness. Some are still in the beginning stages of implementation as well, which doesn't surprise us in terms of some of the attitudes and perceptions that we see across organizations. But we are looking into more of the investment of AI, as well as some of the use cases. So we expect to have more data out by the end of this year or early next year. And I just have some references at the end, including the article that we published back in 2019, if you're interested. Thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Mary Jo. And it's good to see this nice overview, although we all know that AI is not a new thing. It exists already for decades behind the scenes in architectural levels, in algorithms, in predictive modeling, but somehow everyone experiences, or maybe let's say the common user experiences it as a new thing in the industry. I think Linda Sullivan, who's going to be the moderator of our panel, will continue a little bit with this topic in the panel. So I'll give her the opportunity to further respond. And then when Tamara is ready, and thank you, Mary Jo, please stay in if you can. Tamara, if you are ready, you can introduce the panel members.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you also to Mary Jo Lamberti for this nice presentation and the insight into the survey. As Linda already said, we are now coming to the stakeholder panel discussion. It is AI future trends, our topic now. And I would like to introduce you first to our panel moderator, Linda Sullivan, Senior Fellow at Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development. So Linda brings decades of experience optimizing clinical trial performance, focusing on improving metrics and driving operational success in the pharmaceutical industry. As stakeholders, I would like to welcome Jessica Cordes, Senior Consultant and Trainer at Clinical Excellence GmbH. Jessica brings a decade of experience in clinical trial management, specializing in oncology and gene therapy, ensuring the successful setup and execution of complex clinical research projects. Patrick Risch, partner at Ernst & Young. And Patrick brings extensive experience in corporate governance and risk management, guiding organizations through digital transformation while maintaining resilience and ethical standards. Artem Andrianov, CEO and founder at Cyntegrity. Artem brings over a decade of experience developing AI-augmented risk-based management solutions, driving innovation in clinical trials, and improving data quality through technology and leadership. Last but not least, again, Kanchana Iyer, Senior Consultant, Regulatory Affairs at Halloran Consulting Group, whom I had the pleasure of introducing to you earlier. Welcome, everybody, and we can now start with our panel discussion, AI Future Trends, please. Linda Sullivan.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be able to follow my colleagues' presentation of the survey results. I'm sure many of those results were not a surprise to folks, but it'll be interesting to be able to pull some of that into our conversation. Before we start, we wanted to do a couple of quick polling questions. So if we can pull up the first poll, we want to get a sense of kind of those of you in the audience. Where is your organization in terms of using AI machine learning to support drug development? So just select one. You're not interested in using it. You're interested. You're planning to. You're piloting, or you're implementing it right now beyond the pilot phase. Okay, can we see the results?
Yes, here we go.
Great. Well, it looks like we have quite a good mix of folks. The lowest one appears to be that you're not interested. Well, obviously you wouldn't be here if you weren't interested, so I'm not surprised that that's the smallest. So it is nice to see that we've got a lot of folks using or piloting or implementing beyond the pilot phase. So can we go to the next polling question? Okay. And in this question, you're going to have to scroll down, I think, to be able to see all of the different options. But we're really interested to understand kind of what the purpose or around why you're using or why you're hoping to use or interested in AI ML. And you can pick 3 top choices. So the options are you want to speed up drug development, you want to reduce costs, you want to improve the data analytics, you want to reduce risk, improve diversity, identify new drug molecules, speed up the documentation process, automate processes in clinical operations. Okay, let's see what we have. So the biggest one is purple. So automate processes. Then we've got speed up documentation and improved data analytics. Okay, so we've got a variety, and some of that does kind of dovetail nicely with some of the data that Mary Jo presented in the previous presentation. So I want to start off our topic now. Thank you everybody for joining me on the panel. And we just want to expand a little bit more on the use of AI, why are organizations implementing it? And you could tell from the introductions of the panelists, they do come from different perspectives. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say. So Jessica, why don't we start off with you?
Yeah, for sure. So welcome everybody. Actually, I started my own business, so I'm very interested in getting efficient and productive because I'm by myself. So whatever AI is helping me with, I don't need to cover on my own. So I was impressed to see that the document preparation and also the automation is of interest for a lot of people, because I'm completely with you guys. I think that's when it comes to clinical operations, this is really one of the main aspects in clinical project management. And I'm really trying and error already and piloting the AI to see where it makes sense and how the outcome is working and which prompt do you need to use, right? Because prompt engineering is a science by itself. So you need to learn a little bit how to prompt to get the result out of your expectations, right? So this is where I stand. I'm trying. So I'm not working with clinical data. That's the good point. So for now, I'm trying to create documents like, I don't know, I give you a real life example. I'm writing SOPs for clients, and I pushed a prompt. So I'm using Copilot from Microsoft to prepare an impact assessment sheet to cover all aspects whenever I have a change. So I was working on change management for a clinical trial. So I prompted that the Copilot should work as an expert in clinical trials, in good clinical practice, in change management. And I want to create a form, like a checklist, with all important aspects I need to walk the team through to assess a potential impact of that change, right? And the outcome was really good. So it took me 5 minutes and I had a 2-pager form with really good aspects. So I can already see how AI can help us in future more and more. Linda, you're on mute.
Artem, let's see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, what I observe is actually, and that echoes in the words of Jessica, that the majority of audience is really enjoying, so to say, the new world of generative AI era, which started approximately like 1.5 years ago. And definitely that removes a lot of burdens in preparation of documents, summarizing documents, generating new type of texts, which drug development is obviously heavily overloaded in this sense. At the same time, I want to remind also that there is another areas which is called kind of analytical AI, again, where there are also some advances, kind of achievements to see, which could be used, for example, for pattern detection, for image recognition detection, and this type of kind of achievements are maybe not so kind of actively used by everybody in clinical research, but still might bring maybe not less, or could be even more kind of improvements as we, for example, recognize certain dangerous patterns in, for example, reporting of adverse events, or which could, for example, jeopardize patient safety, for example. So this kind of evidence can help and assist, in fact, or even save certain lives. So again, I believe we shouldn't forget about this area as well in drug development, and carefully kind of develop it. And at the same time, I see as well a lot of kind of, on the one hand side, excitement, but on the other hand side, skepticism. Oh, I will not trust it before I will check it myself. Yes, it's normal. And I think as every new technology, so to say, which appears, it could be used for the good or could be used for the bad. And I think at the end of the day, our goal is actually to make sure that good is more preferable worldwide.
So Artem, before we move on, I wanted to just follow up. You were talking about pattern detection. Is that something that you're currently using, and is it picking up patterns and things that humans may or may not recognize? Is this a good example of where AI machine learning can be very helpful?
Indeed, pattern recognition, in fact, was kind of long time considered peculiar, typical for human brains. And in fact, we are, as before, very good in pattern recognition anyway. The thing is that the amount of data which we are dealing with now is overwhelming. I mean, that's the more challenging part, rather than to say, okay, is AI already better than human in recognizing patterns? So the amount of information, the amount of imaging information, the amount in clinical research in particular as well, is just overwhelming, that it is not enough time and not enough focus, in fact, for, and maybe over expensive if you would do it continuously manually. That in this case, AI would significantly allow us to focus on where we could really be most efficient. I think this is, again, to my mind, the key element, so to say. AI will, at least in the near future, help us to see what is more important, so that we could focus on kind of our time, our limited time, obviously, to the areas where it kind of matters the most, where the improvements are the most significant.
Great, thank you. So Kanchana, I sat in on your presentation earlier, and I'm sure the whole area of imaging is one that you might be able to kind of continue that conversation here. So I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, no, thanks, Linda. And kind of going along the lines of what Artem was saying, there's still this, there is still reticence, I think, and I think there always has been with respect to like computational simulation and modeling techniques within the med tech and health tech space. And I think FDA, as an example, has provided guidance to that end, and so that kind of allayed some of the concerns and just the getting over the hump of using some of these more novel techniques. And so similarly, I think we are kind of slowly getting over the hump here with AI and machine learning tools, and I think the regulators are trying to be more collaborative. That's something I shared a little bit about. But there's still a lot of work to be done, and just kind of internally getting the confidence to build these models, to trust the outputs of the models, and iterate on them, and this sort of piece that makes machine learning, what it is, this continuous learning ability, I think there's still a lot of opportunity on both sides of the table to share knowledge and share sort of best practices, so that we can develop that trust in the systems that we are building. So
do you have any examples of what people are currently using successfully?
So I guess, do you mean like applications, Linda?
Yeah.
Like besides imaging? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of it in the imaging space, a lot of sort of early phase companies, because I think that's just, I do think that that's still an area, there's a lot of data being generated. And the other, I guess, area that we're seeing a lot of its use is with clinical trials and virtual clinical trials. So I know a lot of my clinical colleagues are starting to see a lot more of these conversations happening, and just I think more creative ways of thinking about generating clinical data.
Great, thank you. So Patrick.
So first of all, thank you for having me. I would love to have an AI that helps with my cold at the moment, but it's probably not going to happen too fast. From my perspective, and I don't want to bore you with EY and EY processes because it's obviously not too interesting. But I'm coming from another industry, as you heard. I worked for Robert Bosch GmbH, which is a big technology company and an automotive company. And one thing that was quite interesting for me, especially also in the results, in the polling, but also in the study before, is that it's a lot of things you look at the moment is automation of processes and automation of your clinical trial processes. At Bosch, there was one thing more important, was how we get AI and machine learning in the products themselves. And yes, I understand that this is not working with the drugs, maybe not working yet with the drugs. But what about other kind of treatments like quality of life things or diagnostic treatment activities, like the Apple Watch, which can help with an electrocardiogram diagnosis, at least to my knowledge. I'm not deep enough into it, but also in other things, in other areas that may come up into the future, like in mixed reality that helps with surgeries, or the AI helps with robotic engines in there. I think that's a super interesting field as well, where regulations and governance, and you heard I'm coming from the risk consulting space, so risk management, compliance management is something that is close to my heart, is as of important, I believe, within the processes. And to my perspective, I believe that's the how we join those perspectives, the product side, the process side together, and ramp that into a smooth operations within organizations, within your CROs, for example. I believe that this is a key path to understand how this can go hand in hand, basically.
Can I introduce a question of the audience here, because that connects to this topic. I have to look it up. Yeah, here. So how do the differences in regulations and guidelines in different countries affect the innovation of clinical trials? So, for example, countries with less regulation may be able to innovate faster than others and provide value faster for patients and customers and so on. So we are looking to this legislative regulatory landscape. Is it kind of limiting innovation? Maybe Patrick, Kanchana, you have some thoughts on this?
Kanchana, ladies first.
Okay, thank you. I know that there's a lot of chatter out there that that increased regulatory, increased regulation, increased legislation is hindering innovation. The way I see it, I think it can go hand in hand. I think the conversations need to happen in parallel. I think there needs to be sort of a mutual understanding of what the safety and effectiveness, how safety and effectiveness is evaluated in these sort of more novel technologies. So I don't see it as a barrier. I think that a checks and balances system kind of exists anyway. I mentioned that the regulators are talking to one another. So there is visibility as to what's happening, even though the different regions may be at sort of different cadences of implementation. So I don't think you can necessarily get away with getting an approval in one area and not in another, because ultimately there's conversation happening. There's a lot of use of the data that's being generated kind of across the different bodies to get the clearances and approvals, and so much dependency on like real world data and real world evidence, especially for within the AI and machine learning space. So anyway.
I totally agree. I think the way how we use products, how we use processes, how we use data is anyhow cross-border. And if you want to work in certain markets or in certain geographic locations, you need to adjust to the local regulations. Even within your home country, there might be lower regulations or not so hard regulations. But by the end of the day, if we look at most of the regulations, it is just the same stuff we had before in new terms. The EU AI Act is not enforcing what companies not should already have in place for cybersecurity or data privacy and other things. The only thing that maybe in this area comes on top or is newish, so to say, is basically that you need to understand the models and have observation on the models and regulate them in a quite manner you normally should do anyhow if you're an ethical working company, basically, and don't want to harm any people.
Well, and I think I'll add something I think Kanchana had said earlier, which is the regulators are very open and wanting to talk with you early. They purposefully don't put a lot of details into the regulations because they want to make sure the regulations are not too limiting. And in return, they're really looking to work with you very early on, and there are a lot of opportunities. So great. We have one more polling question that we'd like to put up. And this is, going on sort of what are the challenges that people in the audience are facing. You can pick your top three. These are a whole variety, some of which are similar to things that we did see with Mary Jo. So what are the top three challenges that your organization is encountering when implementing or using AI? We've got legal concerns related to data sharing, lack of trust in the output, ethical and privacy concerns, quality of training data, lack of in-house AI expertise, cost of implementing and maintaining the technology, potential challenges from health authorities, and lack of peer review industry use cases. So we'll give you just a minute to answer that. And we're going to kind of shift gears here. And really, we've talked quite a bit about some of the challenges. I do want to see if there are anything that come out of the survey that our panelists would like to continue to comment on. And in particular, really thinking about, how can some of these challenges be addressed so we can better react to some of the quickly changing technologies, advancements, and be able to implement them more quickly in the future. So do we have the results? Okay. So lack of in-house AI expertise seems to be the largest. Then we've got lack of trust of the output, ethical and privacy concerns. We've also got the IP legal concerns related to data sharing. So Patrick, a lot of this is in your area of expertise. I think some of the things that are coming up, would you like to kick us off on your thoughts?
Yes, for sure. I think the concerns and the challenges that have been also shared within the poll is not of a surprise. All organizations at the moment I'm working with, but also my own organization or my former employer, is in particular dealing with those issues and concerns. The matter of fact is, and this is basically what my perspective to it is, AI needs to be a part of the organization strategy in total. It needs to be understood how AI can empower or even change an organization from top to bottom, but also from bottom to top, and how all of those typically integrate. It is important to understand that the AI transformation and all of those challenges is a team sport. It means you have different functions like quality, like legal, like compliance teams, like security teams, but also the more offense games teams like the product development, the IT, and others. They basically need to work together, and they need to have a common framework and a common understanding that helps to really drive an AI transformation within an organization. What I've seen quite successful in some of the companies, they often build an AI center of excellence that helps to orchestrate all of the framework and the logics. Nonetheless, it is important to emphasize that AI then in changing of processes from a manual to an automated process, or changing of a product from a digital to an AI digital product or whatever, it is important that the accountability with the process owner or the product owner is clear with that organization and not with the center of excellence, and that they are driving that change. Important in that kind of broader transformation, I already mentioned it, it's an integrated strategy. It is an understanding for each business function, for each product function, how they can leverage AI. You need to have a technology team that helps to drive AI and the development, and having an AI platform at hand. And the hyperscalers like Microsoft, Amazon, and others already give you at least infrastructure components that can help you with it. You need to have your legal risk team, compliance team, quality team at hand that helps you to set the boundaries and the frame. And you definitely, what we heard also already in the survey before, you need to have a change management training organization in place to upskill your team independently, if you're just using Copilot, which Jessica already told, or if you want to do other things with AI. Sorry.
Artem, do you have some other points you would like to add?
I would like to maybe share our experience, which was quite kind of exciting for me to see. So approximately a year ago, we decided to integrate chatbots for different roles within our organization and make it literally accessible to everybody internally. So dedicated, prepared chatbots. And we figured out, first of all, okay, you need to separate the kind of the areas. You need to establish new processes about building this and training these chatbots. So I remember the conversations with my team when they were saying, "Oh, we need to hire somebody in kind of an expert in AI chatbots." And my response was like, "You could go and try to hire somebody, but there is no one. Yeah, you need to kind of figure it out, or we need to figure it out ourselves." Just because it is so new, there is no kind of an army of experts out there whom we could rely, kind of reach out, and everybody kind of building their center of excellence inside of organization literally on the fly. Yeah, so creating the figuring out, so to say, what works or doesn't work, and kind of I remember my conversation also directly with Microsoft, where we shared some of the concerns about hallucinations of the models, for example, and I was surprised to see there are hundreds of different parameters that you could tweak and configure, kind of which are available over interface, but some of them are not available directly, and even Microsoft internally can tweak them additionally. So the complexity of this was really surprising, but also the possibilities. Yeah, so the possibilities to kind of really tweak and configure, so to say, on the corporate level. That was also surprising as well. So long story short, in my understanding, again, many organizations really are building their expertise, reaching out to consultants as well, and consultants are building their expertise as well during these procedures. But also technology giants like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they are also trying to establish, so to say, the best practice for organizations. Okay, how to use it, how to configure it, what are the kind of patterns, how to separate the documents, so to say, you are submitting to, for example, to AI. It's a kind of tricky time. So because of the speed of the evolution of the technology, but at the same time, again, I hope we've passed already COVID, so to say. That was a challenge as well. So now I assume that is we kind of got already experienced with surprises.
So do you feel your organization is now better able to handle and react to things as we move forward? That just sort of jumping in and doing it is sort of the first step, and then you can adapt and people are more interested and excited about it?
I must say so. Approximately for since our start with working and more or less rolling out across the whole organization the internal chatbots, we've got a lot of different varieties, so to say. Yeah, some customer-oriented chatbots, then internal, which are code-oriented, which helps developers, or documentational chatbots, which are kind of have all internal documents from SharePoint, for example. So that definitely scaled up everybody in the organization, those who are open-minded enough to start using it right away. I'm not saying I cannot say in the percentage-wise, yeah, how efficient everybody inside of our organization, for example, became. I was surprised to see the numbers like 7-fold, 8-fold today. Maybe, again, we're not speaking about, at least in our organization, by like 7-fold increase of efficiency. At the same time, I definitely confirm, again, the speed reaction, working with multiple data sources, multiple areas, therapeutic areas, dealing with large variety of organizations, pharma organizations, CROs. In fact, that's definitely kind of improved, increased, and within our compact scale, so to say, where we are, and I believe I saw definitely the kind of improvements there. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're getting close to the end, and I do want to get to our last question. We have been touching on it, but I do want to close out with really looking at emerging trends in AI technology, and that you all think could really have a great impact on clinical trials. So, Kanchana, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah. So, yeah, I was saying earlier, we're starting to have more of these conversations, just internally about improving efficiencies, becoming more efficient, because within clinical trials, on the drug development side, as well as the medtech side, there's just, so many different processes, so much documentation that's generated. Then when you start thinking about actually supporting our clients with the execution of the trials, Obviously, like I was saying, we're starting to think more creatively about reducing, clinical study burdens, but still working within a compliant and regulatory framework. And so, we're starting to hear more about the development of, like virtual clinical trials and adaptive trial designs. FDA has already published a couple guidance documents on the drug side as well as the device side on adaptive trial designs, and getting the industry to start thinking about kind of going in and making modifications to trial designs to make them more streamlined, kind of as early as possible, right? Then there's the, I'm hearing a lot more about this on the drug development side, the use of like virtual trials with like digital twins. I think a question maybe came up earlier about it. And also, just incorporating parameters like bias. And I think the use of these sort of more creative types of clinical trials will help to address some of those considerations. Because again, we're able to, with like digital twins, we're able to leverage, real clinical data from patients, and then kind of make tweaks kind of virtually, right? And that saves with the burdens that come with doing like a full-fledged live study. And then also thinking about like sort of post-market and sustaining. Some of our clients have like a huge portfolio of products, and so kind of finding again more creative solutions for that sustaining piece, and so not having to do like a full-fledged trial for a device or for a product that's been on the market, that's more established, where the kind of the safety and effectiveness profile is known. These are great ways, I think, great tools to potentially reduce the burden of having to do like a full-fledged RCT or something.
Great, thank you. Jessica, any final thoughts around the future and how AI can help us?
Yes, for sure. So I can't agree more, Kanchana, what you have said. So in general, I do see the trend that AI is getting implemented more and more and will become a routine. And that probably companies who are not using AI to speed up, still keep a high quality, be able to be productive and efficient, maybe even without a workforce in a high number, that those companies not driving AI within their processes will probably get out of the business, right? So I do see that AI will become a must, and you will no longer be competitive if you're not using AI. We do have an issue already to find good, qualified, experienced people, and it will dramatically increase during the next years. And I assume AI will fill that gap in getting efficient, having automated processes. Thinking about protocol writing, you can have an AI support and you get the protocol within a day. Considering all the data available already, you would never be able to have a manual process to come up with that quality, right? So I do see AI will stay and will be that trend. If you're not going with AI, probably you're lost at some point.
Great, thank you. We have 1 minute left. Patrick, any final things you want to share?
No, I think the most important topic is it's worth to embrace the opportunities of AI. it can help all of us. And there are risks, but all of them are manageable. Yeah.
Great, perfect. Artem, final word.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I want to share a very practical example, which will be available very soon, so to say. Linda, you remember in the MCC world or MCC history, so we were developing risk assessment approaches. Yeah, risk assessment tools. RAMPT was kind of very popular, or is very popular. So it's already now getting available where you upload the protocol, you get risk assessment pre-generated as a draft. Yeah, we are very near in a simulation, so to say, of the study. You upload the protocol and you simulate how the performance and how the what are the risks, so to say, will happen in the study, and highlight it in the protocol with recommendations of rewriting it to certain areas. So it will be able very kind of vividly demonstrating what parts of the protocol will be responsible for certain type of the risks and delays in the study. So without running a study, you will be able to simulate this. So again, this is something very exciting. Hopefully a lot of cost optimization potential for pharma organizations, for CROs. And yeah, with these thoughts, I would like to thank everybody.
Great. Well, look forward to coming back in a year and seeing where things are. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Linda. Great moderation and great participation of all the panelists. And please stay in because we got some questions from the audience and you are free to answer the questions. I'm not going to point names. How can AI seamlessly be utilized to better incorporate real-world evidence into clinical trials? Has any of you some suggestions here? So
yeah, I think leveraging real-world evidence where it can be leveraged. You know, we've already seen the FDA approve, you know, certain drug products, certain devices and diagnostics using real-world evidence. I don't think we're there where we can solely rely on RWD, but it's a great opportunity to sort of reduce the clinical burden and complement the studies and maybe make the studies more streamlined. And I think starting to think about that early on, and kind of knowing what your sources of real-world evidence could potentially be, and then incorporating that into your study design and having the conversation with your regulatory bodies is a great way to sort of push that initiative forward, and I think you'll receive support from them.
Thank you, Kanchana. Another question related to the Tufts study. It says, any suggestions from the study on the level which AI systems should be transparent and explainable, bearing in mind varying level of knowledge of AI and machine learning? So which parts of the clinical, of the AI system should be specifically transparent and explainable? Or should they all be explainable, maybe, and transparent?
So that is data that would come out of the use case discussions that we had, and we're still going through some of the details of that. So we'll kind of see in the future what if we have any insights about that from our use case discussions.
Any other thoughts from the other panelists?
If I could add, I assume the origin of the information which AI presents, it is something which is, again, supposed to be transparent, particularly in the healthcare area. So whenever we're speaking about the generated information, we should understand based on which sources this information is coming. Yeah, what are the sources of that? So at least that what I could imagine would be very important. But I'm looking forward to the outputs of the Tufts Institute.
Of the study, yeah, exactly. Another question is, in what way is this AI uptake different from any other technology uptake, like, for example, risk-based quality management? Or is it maybe the same from an implementation perspective, organizational implementation perspective? Who would like to answer to this?
I will give it a try. So in general, you need to think about technology updates, right, to cover AI. But what do you see is that the validation topic is difficult. So we are waiting for the EMA to give us more and more guidance. We see the laws developing, the regulatory requirements coming up, giving us more and more guidance. And the self-learning effect is something normal technology doesn't include, right? So how are you covering that? How are you training the system? So this is bringing complexity into the whole story. And working with AI, I do see how AI is developing over the course of the time. So you need to have a strategy in place, whether you're going on the fly with every update or how you're managing those changes to be done. Every day we get new functionalities in ChatGPT, etc. So this is something you need to keep in mind as well, because this is a technology way faster developing than any other. So you need to be very long-term thinking and broad in your strategy, more than for normal digital technologies.
Any counter opinion there, or are we all agreeing with this? Because if we are in agreement, I would like to go to the closure. No, Linda, go ahead.
So the one observation I would make that makes this somewhat different in some aspects than other technology implementation is it's especially the generative AI component. It's something that people are using on their own outside of work. So it's not just something that's happening in your office, that's this mystery that people who are experts know about. It's just becoming part of what we all rely on and use every day. And in some ways it makes you more comfortable. In some ways, maybe you're not. It could be partly driven by your personal experience with using ChatGPT, and whether you're getting information out of it that is garbage, or whether you're impressed at how good it was to, and simple things like, just your own personal search or summarizing something that, happened. So I think there's that additional component to it that does make it somewhat unique.
Thank you, Linda. So the last words are reserved for Artem. Please go ahead, Artem and Tamara.
So first of all, I'm really thankful for this insightful discussion. We had 2 amazing days. We had amazing speakers. I've learned so much in these 2 days. Again, that was very useful. I was making notes, trying to understand again what additional materials and where I could get them about these areas. So it looks like there is a lot of questions. The questions appear quicker than the answers, and therefore such kind of discussions and conversations are very useful for all of us. I would like also to thank audience for active participation today. We had very insightful questions, and I believe again that there will be a lot of echo effects happening again and again in different type of conferences out there, following up on these questions further and further. So thanks everybody, and I would wish happy understanding, so to say, of AI and embracing it step by step, making sure that it's also used for the positive and trying to avoid the risks and helping each other if we see that the others are really struggling with that. So with that, thanks everybody, and wish everybody great rest of the day.
Thank you also very much from my side for attending, as Artem already said, our virtual summit, Responsible Artificial Intelligence in Clinical Trials, presented by Cyntegrity. And hopefully we see you again virtually. So for our next event, that will be a little bit in a different format. It will be a live workshop. And I would like to invite you to join us on Wednesday, the 23rd of October for the Minds on RBQM workshop, Define Key Risk Indicators to Monitor Key Risks. If you're interested, it is a complimentary workshop, and our RBQM experts, Johan Pröve and Keith Doricott, will guide you through how to define key risk indicators to monitor key risk. Would be nice to see you again then. Thank you also very much from my side. Have a nice rest of the day, and see you again soon, hopefully. Goodbye.